Welcome to Sonar Traffic Studio in the woods near Utrecht, part of Stichting Klank, a foundation that runs an anti-squat building with a lot of musicians, drummers, singers, songwriters, producers, and me as electronics freak. I started this studio around 2012 with Ben Spaander, also known as Cosmic Force. We both had an interesting collection of synthesizers, and we thought, well, maybe we combine that and rent the place out to people so they can record with unique synthesizers. We thought that was a great idea. It did happen. Didn't provide us a livelihood though. So quickly we moved on to our own separate path. Ben is still making music as Cosmic Force and as Ultra Station, doing really well there. I still rent out the studio now and then, but mostly I'm working as a sound designer and teacher about electronic music instruments. Before that, in the 90s, I was in a techno act called Human Beings. And I'm also a live sound engineer. And I also organize Modulation, which is a modular synth event in Utrecht, loosely every 2 months or more, like when we feel like it. And I'm part of the Dutch Modular Fest crew. I started listening to music. And first that was stuff like U2 and The Police. And then I discovered bands like Simple Minds and TC Matic, and they had these instruments that were not guitars or drums. They had not pianos, but they had electronic keyboards, and I was fascinated by that sound. I started to get drawn more and more to bands who used not only drums and guitars and pianos and vocals, but more like these electronic music and these synthesizers. I found out about the whole electronic body music scene, all kinds of new wave bands that use that kind of stuff. Before that, I was also into industrial music, so the more experimental side of things. Not the industrial music that you know now, but it's really more like noise, Neubaut and Test Department, Thorn Gristle, Coil, that kind of stuff. Pretty experimental music. So I was drawn to sound early as well. I thought what was interesting about synthesizers, they sounded different, and you could mold them in ways that was really different from all the other sounds that you knew. So yeah, then techno and acid house and house came along, and that was an amazing experience for me because that was electronic music that not only me liked, there were other people that liked it as well. I had already bought a couple of synthesizers. I started out playing drums, but I was not good at practicing, so I sold my drum kit and bought like a little synthesizer with also a drum part in it. I think it was a Roland MT32, and I had an Atari computer with Cubase, I think, at the time. So I was making a little bit of music with that, but pretty soon I heard that house sound. I instantly heard that's a 909. I remembered that because I was already reading all the magazines and seeing, Prophet 5, 14,000 guilders. I will never be able to afford that. Oh, yeah, all that kind of things. And when I heard those early house records, I instantly recognized that 909, which was a failed drum computer by Roland that nobody wanted because there were no real drum sounds in there except for the cymbals. Everybody wanted a drum computer with real drum sounds. Why, I still don't understand, because I think it's a different instrument. The drummer and a drum computer are two entirely different instruments. So I went to all the little music shops that I knew, and suddenly, there was a 909 in the storefront of a music shop, and it said 300 guilders. And I was looking at my bank account, and it said, 300 guilders for the rest of the month. Yeah, let's grab that and buy the 909. So yeah, that bought my first 909. Pretty soon afterwards, I bought my Pro 1. That's basically, so the 909 Pro 1, MT32 I sold pretty quickly, but the 909 and Pro 1, I still have them both. Still in good working order. Yeah, that's kind of how it started. At some point I started making music myself with these things. Sometimes I did a little performance in Echo. Echo was the club that I was a volunteer at, and also one of the first clubs in the Netherlands to play acid house and techno. Unlike the big fancy Roxy clubs, Echo was like a youth center at the time, but they were really ahead in kinds of music they played. So I had made a table next to the DJ desk and set up my 909, and I borrowed a synthesizer from a friend of mine that had a sequencer in it, and you could do several parts. It was a sequential multi-track. So I made some beats on that, and I was kind of playing those beats on one of those Echo nights. And there's this big guy, this really tall guy, came up to me and said, "Hey man, I have a schnabel. Do you want to join?" could use you and your 909. And I was like, I knew the guy because he was in one of my favorite new wave bands at the time. He was in A Modest Proposal, not very well known. Within Utrecht they were reasonably well known, but internationally, absolutely not. Later they became something of a cult classic. So I came over to his place with my 909. He had all this gear. He had an Insonic Mirage, and he had a TX81Z, and he had a big mixer, and he had a Syrinx, and he had a Moog the Source. Why they are here now, I'll tell you later. That's a bit of a sad story. So yeah, it was a really good time. I was there more often and more often. At some point he was saying, I'm selling that, I'm selling that, I'm selling that. So you know what, I'll buy it and I'll leave it here if I can come here more often and make music with you. And I was coming to the house that often and staying over at his place that often that at some point he said to me, you know what, maybe you should start paying rent. So yeah, that's how human beings started. And first we were together with Peter Kneinenberg, who was a teacher and later almost professor, I think, I'm not sure. We did with the three of us. And at some point Peter got too busy and it was me and Bert. And we did a couple of 12 inches, first on a crazy label, later on a label by friends of ours, Deviate Records. We toured all over the Netherlands, every like Paradiso, Vera, Tivoli, Echo. We played Echo 10 times, I think. That was our home base. And we played all the youth centers and pop venues in the Netherlands. And we did one gig in Germany and one gig in Belgium, and we did 2 gigs in Prague because a friend of mine of ours lived there and invited us over. But mostly played the Netherlands. But we did start at the same time as Orbital and Underworld, and we used the same techniques as Orbital and Underworld to play live. We had 2 MT8s, you had a mixing desk with a sampler, 909, a couple of synths all hooked up together, a couple of effects devices, and basically dubbed that out live and used the MT8s to switch on several tracks and to mute and unmute several tracks and switch patterns. It was good fun. And when we went out to a show, we all called some friends. Hey, we have a show tonight. Can you drive? Because neither of us had a driver's license. So can you drive? And then we'd invite a couple of other friends. You want to come? It's fun, you know. And yeah, had a really good time. And then it kind of died down in the late 90s. Bert started working with another act called Bonobo, kind of big beat scene they were in. Not the Bonobo you know today, but the Utrecht Bonobo with early electronic and DJ Paradise. I had just started working as a live sound engineer at Tivoli. And then in 2005, Bert had a brain hemorrhage and passed away. And that was just one of the saddest days of my life. So yeah, he's not there anymore. And this is why these 2 beautiful machines, the Synton Syrinx and the Moog the Source, are here now. And that's my inheritance from him. Yeah, that's the end of the human being story. Well, the inspiration definitely was the Synthesizer Studio Hamburg. At the time I was doing sound for T. Raumschmiere, German electro-punk rock god. I was his sound engineer and also a little bit his tour manager. And now and then we played a place called Übel und Gefährlich in Hamburg. And that's located in a big old Flakturm. It's a huge bunker that used to have like these Flugabwehrkanonen, like air defense guns on top of it. And it was like a bunker for civilians to shelter in when there were bombardments at the same time. So when you came up into the club, there was an elevator for your gear, but there was also a huge spiral staircase, and the club was on the 5th floor or the 6th floor or something. It was a really nice, cozy club. Inside, outside just this scary bunker. Inside it was a really nice and cozy club. The staff were amazing, really good people. And then at some point, one of the front of house guys there who was working with me told me, you're into synthesizers, right? Well, come over. And he opened like a gate behind the wardrobe and a door behind the wardrobe. A room full of synths. And yeah, this is our studio. You can rent that and you can use it. They had an Art Quadra and they also had a Jupiter 8, I think, and a Prophet 5 and a Mini Moog. And I was like, this is heaven. Yeah, that was the inspiration for me to do something similar in Utrecht. And when I met Ben, I was explaining this idea to him. He said, well, he wanted to join me. So we tried doing that. And sadly, there was less interest for it than I thought there would be. I thought this was a really good business idea. No, it wasn't, apparently. Why, I still don't know. Maybe people do prefer to work at home, in the comfort of their own home, with the gear they have. And also we said instantly, we don't want to rent out stuff to go out of our studio. Because, it's fragile. All this gear, it's really fragile. So that's why we decided not to do that. And I do it occasionally with people who I really trust, but I've been burned a couple of times as well with that. So yeah, that's how it started. Nowadays it's still possible. It's still a thing I offer to people. And sometimes I get somebody who wants to do that, but it's really rare. Also maybe, this all really costs money. The upkeep of all these synths is freaking expensive. I mean, being anti-squat here, the rent is reasonable, but yeah, keeping all this working and in good working order is really expensive. So it has to cost something. And yeah, I don't know what's normal. The pricing, set the price for this is really hard. Even 50 euros an hour is for me is tight. And for somebody else, it's really, really, really expensive, And what you'll see is the people that you would like to offer it to, the younger musicians, they don't have that kind of money. And then people who do have that kind of money say, what does that cost? They'll buy it themselves. Also, I think we live in the golden age of analog synthesizers these days. The old era in the 70s and 80s ended. In the 90s, you couldn't buy any analog synths. That returned, and you can now buy more analog synths than ever. But some of them sound really, really good. I mean, the new Oberheim, the OBX8. I'm thinking of getting rid of my Oberheims and getting a new one. I'm actually thinking about it. I'm not there yet, because I cherish the old machines. But yeah, I'm at that border. So yeah, that's we both started to do our own things, and at some point we separated also the locations. And Ben is working in Utrecht and in another venue and really working to focus on his music, which is hard-hitting electro, hard-hitting techno, which really is not so compatible with me teaching or doing subtle sound design, We were always in the same room, which was really social and nice and cozy and good fun and good laugh. But when you were actually working, he was blaring loud beats. Me, I'm trying to teach somebody here. That didn't really work. So when the time came and Qattara, which we were originally part of, moved here, outside of Utrecht in the woods, Ben said, I'm staying in Utrecht. And I said, I'm going with the rest. So now Qattara has transformed into Stichting Klank, and I'm still here, and he's still in Utrecht, and that's fine. Yeah. So that's how that changed, and started focusing more and more on sound design and teaching. Still do some music, I play out with my modulars now and then, and bring them out, do some soundscape work, and I am even planning to do some more dancey stuff at the time. Like I said, now and then I do a human beings gig as well. I started Modulation in 2015 at Qattara, originally as a place for me to play out with my modular for myself, and also a little bit as like a promotion vehicle for Sonar Traffic. That was the original idea. So I invited Ben to play on his System 700 that he had at the time. I invited Jan Willem of Ginkgo Synthese. And Qattara was in the old Tivoli building, so it had a beautiful, beautiful hall, and there was a reasonable PA as well that we got on loan from a PA company. So you get good sound. For me, it was like, I want to play. And here I was definitely inspired by Dennis from Noodle Bar. Because I visited Noodle Bar a couple of times. I said, this is the perfect electronic music Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening. I think I even talked to Dennis, hey, do you think it's okay if we do something like this in Utrecht? And I definitely credited him for hey, I totally stole the idea of him. So yeah, there we went, we put the tables in the middle of the room, we had a good PA, and we invited a couple of people, especially myself, because I wanted to play out myself, and started the evening. And I thought, well, if 20 people come and most of them are my best friends, I'll be fine. And then suddenly there were 40 people there. Certain point, it came loose from this whole idea of it using it to promote Sonar Traffic. Well, it became its own thing. Especially now, I try to inspire people. I try to get people interested. It's like popularization I think is a word. I invite newcomers, but I also invite veterans, and I try to get a conversation going between those. And that could be between themselves, but also with the audience. What I've been doing since the start, and that just happened. I started introducing everybody, having a little tiny interview before their set, and telling a little bit about them. What are you going to do today? Do you have anything special in your case that we should note? Do you have a special plan behind what you're going to do? Or maybe not, doesn't matter. If you want to go totally improvise, tabula rasa, fine. And also another thing that I did after the show, I invited people to come and talk to the artist about what they had just done and about what their system is like. That turned out to be a real nice interaction. I still do that today, and it still works really well. And it gets people who are, like I said, veterans, think it's cool, but also, of course, people who are interested in this crazy thing with all these cables that looks like a telephone exchange or like the Starship Enterprise. I don't know. What is that? And you see people drawn to it, and I hope it inspires them to do something with their own creativity. And what that is, I don't care. I mean, I've seen people drawing during modulation. I thought that was awesome. You know, I try to make a really open, inclusive night for everyone, for every being that's interested in anything electronic. It doesn't even have to be modular. I say it's modular focused, but I'm not a Nazi that only modular. No. I have some beautiful acts without any modular. Like Miruzi Margina is a girl from Tilburg who makes these really dark horror soundtracks. And she doesn't use modulars, but just does use synths. She's like a Prophet X and a cool sequencer. I'm not sure if it was an MPC or what, but she makes gorgeous music. It's really scary. It's really horror film soundtrack stuff, and then really scary. Or yeah, she dreamed of playing Roadburn Festival because she was kind of from the metal scene, but dived into synthesizers. She was so cool. And she was also in a persona for herself that was just so great. And she actually did go and play Roadburn. So yeah, I try to inspire people, connect people as well. Veterans among each other, also veterans and newcomers. And try to build a community, you know, in a way that's working, I think. Because the fun thing is, by now, in Utrecht, we have not only modulation, but we have open forums at both 1 to 2. We have Ricardo Verschut doing Naar de Knoppen in Maarssenveen. And we have the Synth After Work thing. And then there's at ACU, the Electronic Open Stage. There's a collective called Synth and Beat who organize synth jams. So suddenly there's all these electronic music events going on. And if I had only 1% to do with that, I'm stupid proud. But I'm also very happy with it nowadays. I don't do it alone anymore. I work together with Veerle from Acid Solder Club, who is the queen of anything DIY in the Netherlands, I'd say. You should really go and visit her and her workshop, because it's all decor. I mean, here you kind of have to look for it. There you can point your camera anywhere and it looks gorgeous. And it's all freaky. Or it's her giant wall of little drawers with electronic components, or it's her radar cabinet filled with a modular, or it's her five organs. You know, it's amazing space. You really should go and visit that. So I do it together with Veerle now, and we decide on who comes to play and share ideas among each other. So for fun with Sinterklaas, we did the Sinterklaas bingo. So we had a bingo with the local comedian being the bingo master, and we all synth questions. And it was good fun. Yeah. One of the first acts to play modulation was Jan Willem from Ginkgo Synthese. I was visiting his workshop now and then because we get along pretty well. He also built these cases, by the way. And the idea behind these cases, these go together and these go together. So then I'd have a travel case. I don't travel with these anymore because they're so heavy. But you know, let's say it's luggable. Yeah. So he built these cases. They're really well built. They have ample power supplies. They're all Duffer bus boards. Great job. I have the Ginkgo Synthese LFOs. I have a sample slicer, you know, in here. So I love what he did. And then at some point he's in this place called the Strumming in Den Haag, and he said, I'm going to do a modular festival called Ginkgo Fest. He invited me to be there as well with Sonar Traffic. He said, you can have a stand there. So I made a little stand with Sonar Traffic. And then I think it was 1 or 2 years later, Jan Willem said, I want to make this Dutch Modular Fest. And do you and a couple of other Dutch organizers like Dennis from Noodle Bar, but also Jurgen from Modulab, Bart from Voltage Control Amsterdam. So he asked a couple of people to join him in a new foundation called Dutch Modular Fest, Stichting Dutch Modular Fest. So the first Dutch Modular Fest was at the Besturing. It's kind of a sequel to Ginkgo Fest. So we did it a couple of times in Den Haag, and one time we went to do 2 or 3 days, and then it became really stressful. It broke. And it also broke us as people a little bit. And after that, Jan Willem decided he didn't want to do it anymore. And we said, yeah, we want to go on. But then COVID happened, actually. So we couldn't do it. So we were planning to do it in TAC, in Eindhoven, Temporary Art Center. We did do it in the end, because we did a stream of 9 hours, which was really fun. But, you know, not what we wanted. And then after COVID, we got in touch with the people of Uncloud Festival, who somehow got a hold of a really interesting location. It was an old prison in Utrecht. And that's where we returned with Dutch Modular Fest and started out again. So the gym, the old gym of the prison was the performance room in the hallways of the old prison. That's where the market was. Just finished another one in Rotterdam because the prison is not available anymore. And then we found a really good partner in Worm. Really cool experimental art place in Rotterdam with an interesting building, just enough space to do it, and all the facilities are there. I think we had a really good one this year. At some point where we were working in Sonar Traffic in the old place, in the old Tivoli, we were in the attic of the old Tivoli, by the way, which looked really cool with the industrial piping to the side. So it was a great looker of a place, but it was also a lot of stairs to climb. And at some point we got a call from some guy who was the Dutch importer of Arturia, and they wanted to do a video for the presentation of the Beatstep Pro at Sonar Traffic. So we have a nice backdrop with some synths and modular because it had CV out, synths because it had MIDI out. Can we do a video there? So yeah, sure, cool. I think there was also somebody from Arturia France, from the promotion department there present. And at some point I said, hey, do you need people to do presets for you? Because, I'm kind of a synth freak and I like making sounds on synths. He said, well, I'll put you in touch, And that's how I started with Arturia. Then through a contact of mine that will have to remain anonymous, I got asked to work on a synth by an English designer, but with a German owner. It was a big secret. Can you say what you think of the synth? And so, yeah, I want to say what I think, but I also want to make presets for it. That's good, you can also make presets for it. So I got prototype number 2 of the DeepMind 12 by Behringer. I did a couple of presets for that as well. That was the first hardware job I did. I mostly do software. Another thing that happened, an old friend of mine dropped by. He used to be the light engineer for human beings. But he went on to do a lot of preset work for synthesizers, but also working a lot with Tom Holkenborg, Junkie XL, assisting him in projects and also doing sound design for him. But also, he lived in LA for a while, did sound design for big companies there, and he also did sounds and music for trailers. And he came visit and he was looking at what I was doing in my modular, and he was like, maybe I can use what you're doing. So yeah, then I did, can you make some sounds for, this is what I need for trailer sounds. So I started out doing trailer sounds for him, like weird effect sounds, that they put in when the big robot steps on the floor, and I don't know, all these crazy trailer type sounds. And suddenly he got a call from, I think it was Native Instruments, saying, hey, you used to do presets for us. Do you still want to do that? And he asked me, do you want to do that? Because he was kind of more setting up his company for where he was more leading the company and outsourcing the sound design jobs to other people around him. The company is called The Solos. I still do work for them. So that's my first job for Native Instruments. That was on Massive X. Via the Solos, there came more work on sound design, either samples or presets. I reached out to some other companies myself, like for instance Kilohearts. I did a pack for Faceplant, and I got an email from Fabfilter saying, hey, our Fabfilter Twin is getting an update. Do you want to do presets for that? So yeah, sure. I'd love to. For a Dutch company, I'd love to work for your beautiful products. So that ball started rolling, and now also the thing I do when I go to Superbooth, I don't go to Superbooth only for fun anymore, because it's a really important network event for me as well. At some point, I just talked to somebody at the Korg stand and said, hey, here's my card. If I ever can do some sounds for Korg, can you drop it at the right place? And I think a year later, I got an email from Japan, a sound designer at Korg, saying, hey, we would like to work with you. We saw the portfolio, that's pretty impressive, because in the meantime I had worked on Ashlight for Native Instruments, doing samples and presets. I'd worked on stuff for Steinberg, a lot more for Arturia, and I got asked to do presets for the Grand Stage X which of course I couldn't talk about that for like 2 years. And I worked on like an emulator thing. So that was really cool to work for something for a hardware instrument of this legendary manufacturer. I was really proud of that. And now I also did a couple of presets for the new Kronos, which is of course, it's one of the main workstation synths out there. It's quite an honor, so I'd say, yeah. So that's still going well. I'm doing a little bit more acquisition for that now, trying to find a couple of other companies. So if you're out there, you need presets for your software or hardware synths, do drop me a line. I have the pleasure to work in this room with quite an array of vintage synths, and they all kind of have a story. The biggest story I've already told about was Synton Syrinx over there. That synth is very special to me. Not only did I inherit that from my late friend Bert, but also it was built in Utrecht by somebody I know. And it's a unique sounding synth. There's basically nothing like it. It has like a filter with 2 extra resonant peaks, which gives it the ability to do throaty sounds. And it's really funky. It's also really rare. There's 300 of them. Most of them are black, and about 20 of them are red, and I have one red one here. There's also blue ones, or kind of purplish ones, and I think there's white ones. And later, somewhere in the early 2000s or late 90s, they had found the components for another 9 of them without keyboard. So there's also 9 red Syrinxes without a keyboard, like modules. So that's a really unique thing. That will never leave me. Now and then I get a message from somewhere out on the internet saying, I see you have a Syrinx, do you want to sell it? And the answer is simply no. I mean, if I would put it on eBay, probably eBay would break, I don't know. They show up very rarely and they go for crazy prices. Actually, there's a guy in the east of the Netherlands called Analog Effects who builds a tiny desktop version of the Syrinx, which is pretty close. So well done. He was at Dutch Modular Fest as well, actually. I tried it out there and I said, oh, this is well done. Yeah. But of course, it's legacy. It's built in Utrecht. It's something special. A big favorite of mine is the Pro One. One of the first synths I ever bought. I love its sound. It's really strong sounding. It's punchy, bit raw. Not as grainy as, for instance, the MS-20, but really tight, and it has a lot of power. That'll stay with me forever as well, as long as it keeps working, and after that probably as well. Another thing that's really special is the Prophet 5 over here is my first analog polysynth, and it's kind of like 5 Pro Ones in one. I mean, the operation of the thing is pretty much the same, but I think it has a bit of a smoother sound, which is probably to do with how the 5 voices are mixed together. I'm not sure. There is a difference in sound. The Pro One is more fierce. The Prophet 5 is a bit more nice, so to say. I think it's a really creative machine. It's the limitation in the controls forces you to make good choices about how you design your sound. But there are a couple of tricks that you can do, especially with the polymod section, that will take it into interesting sound design territory. And if you really want to hear it shine, check the album Tin Drum by Japan, and you can really hear what the Prophet 5 can do. Another favorite is down there, is the Yamaha DX7 II. I got taught synthesis at Music Technology. Started out in 1988, year 2 of the existence of music technology. Don't think I was a really good student. There was one class that I ate up, and that was the synthesis class by Ernst Bonis. When it comes to synthesis, my hero. Still with us, and he has a great website explaining some really interesting synthesis concepts, ernstbonis.nl. Go check that out. He taught us about FM synthesis a lot. And he had written the manual for the DX7, for the Dutch manual for the DX7. I still have a copy of that, and that's really, if you want to learn about FM synthesis, go get the old DX7 manual, Dutch DX7 manual. I like the DX7 too, because it's kind of upgraded. It can do 2 sounds at one. I think it sounds better than the old DX7. I'm not this lo-fi freak all the time. Sometimes I really like it. Basically, the DX7 sounds better. It has a better keyboard as well. Very digital, of course. I'm not an analog purist at all. Everything has its own place in this world. I do love my analog synths, but I mean, the DX7 can do things a Prophet 5 cannot do. It's not important if something's analog or digital. It's possible to get a really good sound recorded with a really crappy microphone. And it's also possible to get a really bad sound recorded with a very expensive microphone. You have to kind of learn the ways of that. I learned a lot about microphones as well during my time at Music Technology. And of course, I learned a lot more in my experience as live engineer. And I still make mistakes. I still do stuff wrong. I make mistakes and I fail at experiments all the time. And every time I take something away from that. I still like to play with sound. Like I said, I was interested in industrial music. And I think my music taste is somewhere at the corner. I think my wife actually organized a party at some point. Bleeps and bloops and pretty songs. It was the theme of the party for my 40th birthday. Which kind of describes my musical taste. Somewhere between noise and pretty songs. Like them both. At some point, I also got a question from a local private course, hands-on lessons about synthesis. 2 people from the course would come here to the studio. They would have a theoretical lesson by Rob Papen, famous Dutch preset designer, and then they had like a hands-on lesson here at the studio. 2 people at a time, and we basically go through the whole idea of how is a standard subtractive synth built up? VCO, VCF, VCA, LFO, envelope generator. How do they all work separately and how do they connect together to make sound? Which is a story which is like kind of ingrained in my brain. So I started doing that because the question was there, and I found out that I really liked it. I had a really good time trying to get people to get their head around this whole concept of like an oscillator, an electronic circuit that makes a wave, which gets filtered by a filter, and you can shape that sound. You can shape volume or different things with a VCA, and you can use an envelope generator, like a function that has a start and an ending, or an LFO, a function that keeps going and going and going, to shape all these different parameters, and that will in the end form your sound. Of course, these lessons take 3 hours, so I really dive deep into it. I often use the Jupiter 6 for that, because the Jupiter 6 is like not the most difficult synth. It's also not the most simple synth. It has 2 oscillators, it has a multi-mode filter, it has 2 envelopes, it has LFO, so you can basically go through all the concepts and also go through how they work together. And also, I can put the students over there and me behind the synth. I can operate the synth from behind. Can always operate that synth blindly. So that's really like a show and tell thing, and people can get their hands on the thing, try out things. It's really physical. And on my computer monitors, I also always have an audio analyzer and a scope. That's how it looks. It looks like a triangle. That's why it's called a triangle wave. And you can see in the frequency analyzer, it contains these frequencies. That's different from a sawtooth wave, which contains way more frequency. And actually it looks different. It looks like a sawtooth, which is why it's called a sawtooth wave. So I found out that also I had various levels of students. Some people, I know what an oscillator is, and some people have no idea. And I found out that I could adapt very fluidly to find ways to use like water as an analog to explain signal flow, or I found all kinds of ways where I could improvise and get these concepts in these people's heads. And that to me was really rewarding. Sometimes you see it click with somebody, and not just click so I know how it works, but you can also see I know what I can do with this. And what's my goal? My ultimate goal would be, which is kind of strange because I would like people to make their own sounds, which is kind of in problem with my job because I make sounds for other people. But still, I would like, especially I would like to stimulate people's creativity to design their own sounds, and because I really like doing that, and I hope other people like doing that as well. And yeah, that's what I try to get across to people. That is fun also, and that there's more to life than a super saw lead, which in itself, of course, is a great sound. But there's also more to life than getting the best hardstyle kicks. I can absolutely show you how to make a kick on a modular or with any synth. It's not a problem, but there's other things you can do. And also maybe it's interesting, a thing that I do use in my lessons is okay, we're going to do something which is not necessary. We're going to try to emulate a stringed instrument. It's not necessary because we have stringed instruments and stringed instrument players, like a violinist. If you want to get a violinist in your music, get a real one. The synthesizers sound great in themselves as their own thing. Just like drum computers sound great as their own thing. It doesn't have to emulate a drummer. It's a different thing. But there's an interesting thing in trying to emulate a violin on the synthesizer will tell you a lot about how that synthesizer works and how the acoustics of certain instruments work, and how, like for instance, A waveform doesn't say a lot about how a sound sounds. The way the transient is shaped says a lot about how a sound sounds. Like the start of the sound is really important for how we experience it. Using envelope generators and VCAs to make a sound gradually come in, like a violin, have a tail because a violin is played in a concert hall, so there will also be some kind of reverb. You kind of simulate the reverb with making sure the violin doesn't cut off instantly. All that kind of concepts makes you connect how you're going to work with synthesizers with the real world. Again, I hope that tickles your creativity, makes you able to do things that you'd want to do, that get your idea of sound in there. Like big inspirations today, first that comes to mind is Roly Porter, somewhere between soundscapes and cinematic stuff and great choir explosions. Everything I hear from him is like, whoa, what happened? You know, it takes somebody for me to get inspired and excited to make myself wonder, how did they do this? Or maybe I do know how they did it, but man, that was a lot of work, or, you know, that kind of things. So yeah, Roly Porter is one, more on the experimental side than more on the pop music side. It's something that I found out a couple of years ago. Coreless with a K. He did some stuff for FKA Twigs as well. He made his own album called Agora, which is gorgeous. Really well built, and he doesn't use any synthesizers at all. It's all done in Ableton, I think. It's really a kid with a computer, and he stuns the hell out of me. All his tracks are so intricate, and there's like really well done. Sounds the business, and it's also really good music. It's also melodic and rhythmically. I mean, there are no kick drums in the whole. There are absolutely hardly any drums in the whole record, but it's very rhythmical still. So that's great. I really like Barker, because I think his melodies and intricate arpeggios, interwoven stuff. Again, somebody who doesn't use kick drums in his music. Yeah, those are the couple of guys that have recently been really interesting to me. Yeah. I'm not entirely sure what the future holds. I'm definitely sure that I'm going to do some more preset work, and I'm going to teach him more and more. I'm in the process of setting up a 5-lesson modular course, a kind of modular 101, like with one lesson which is all about oscillators, one lesson which is all about filters, and maybe one lesson which is all about signals and how that all works together. Conglomerate of 5 lessons to be taught here, I hope. Probably also using VCV Rack, because, you know, you can put that on your own computer for free, and it's a really cool thing to teach by, because you can quickly make a little setup, get that on the screen, and say, okay, this is connected this way, and this is connected that way. This functionality of this module works like that and that. So that's one of the ideas. I hope to do the first one this year still, but I have a couple of things to work out, because I want to get some stuff on paper or on file that I can hand out to people as well, and that takes a little bit of work. I mean, I could do it off the top of my head, but then I wouldn't have anything for people to take home, and I actually do want to have something for people to take home, including, for instance, a couple of VCV files with simple examples. So that's a work in progress. I still hope to do the first ones this year. I've gotten really into Chase Bliss pedals, like an experimental guitar pedals, and I'm planning to make an ambient album with a couple of sources and using lots of pedals to play with, because it's fun. I suddenly realized, hey, if I put my mind to it, I could really make an album with that. Let's see. Not sure that happens, but I want to go and try. And I'm not going to guarantee that it will be shockingly good. Again, it's something I want to do it for myself mostly, and hopefully some other people like it as well. If they don't, no problem. And there's another thing I want to do, which is a field recording workshop. Grab a couple of field recorders, little ones, and take people out, find a spot where there's interesting sounds, record them, tell people about good ideas when you go out to record, inside or outside the house, tell people about how to process those files, how to go about organizing them, how to go about editing them, how to go about maybe noise reduction, how to go about naming them, especially if you want to use these files in libraries. There are certain ways to do that, not laws, but good ideas, like A lot of the things in sound and music are not set in stone, but there's like pretty good ideas that you could follow if you'd want to. Oh yeah, there's another thing. So I came up with this idea of Sonar Traffic Social Synth Saturday. Once in a while, I'm not going to set a frequency, once in a while I'll invite a couple of people, maybe 10, maybe 15, I don't know. I have to find out what works, you know. To have them come over here and have an afternoon, a Saturday afternoon, and just hang out and jam. I'll make a workstation here, make a workstation there, put up a Jupiter 8 here, and have a couple of headphone amps so you can plug into that and just play and hang out and talk with each other and have a social synth Saturday. Small idea, but a fun idea, I think. Send me a mail, say, I want to come on this date, and then I say, okay, we have 10 people now, that's it for this time. And then maybe if that's okay, maybe I'll try to do 15, or maybe I'll say, no, it's 8 is better. See what happens. And so I want to do that with all the stuff that's here. And at some point I will also want to go and invite manufacturers to come over here for this Social Synth Saturday. So you can have an opportunity to really go in depth with a machine that you've seen on the internet. You've maybe seen at Super Booth, or maybe you've seen at Dutch Modular Fest, but it was all too crowded. There was no time. You couldn't really get in depth with the machine, with the module or the effect pedal or the little synth or the granular sampler. So you can really get some time on the machine on your own with like maximum 8 to 10 other people. I hope people would like that. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe manufacturers would like it as well. I don't know. So of course, it's a really small audience for them to come out. But then again, you know, you get some proper me time with an instrument. I think that's valuable. Because that's really hard to do, of course. So say you want to start, you get inspired, you go to Modulation, you go to Dutch Modular, you get inspired by all these things going on, and you say, I want to get into electronic music myself. So what do I do? First of all, I say you probably have a computer, okay? Maybe you don't have a DAW yet. If you don't have any money, you could download VCV Rack, which is free. Kind of has some limitations, but not a lot. Most of it's there. You could start digging into how modular synthesizers work on that. It's different from this because this is tactile. It really has some value that you work with real cables and real knobs and real sockets. That really makes a difference in the experience and also in the way you make music. It's different from being at a computer. Probably you're at a computer a lot of time and maybe you don't want to be at a computer. But still, it's a good idea to start there. If you don't have a DAW, you want one, you could do worse and download Reaper, which is not free software, but you can use it for free. At some point, if you really like Reaper, I would implore you to pay $70 or 70 euros to the guy who makes one of the best DAWs out there for very little money, and you can actually use it for free. So it contains already a lot of things that you need. You can add, there's a lot of free plugins out there. If you really want to get into hardware, you could dive into DIY. If you know your way around a hammer and nails and wood, which I don't, you could hammer yourself a little case and get some rails, like these rails. You can buy those. And you could screw them into the case and get some bus boards and a power supply and start building your own modules with like a soldering iron. There's kits everywhere, from really simple to really elaborate kits, DIY kits. You can solder yourself. It's an interesting process. You learn a lot about how electronics work, with a lot more than I do, for instance, because I'm not a soldering type. I can't really do that. This is why Veerle is my goddess, you know. She's just so amazing at that stuff. So yeah, that could save you a lot of money, and you could build your own modular, which is not only a lot cheaper, but it's also extremely rewarding, knowing that everything in that case is something you yourself built. And there's modules out there with functionality that are not less than all the already built modules that I have in my system. Actually, I have a couple of modules in here that I asked friends of mine to build because I couldn't get the functionality somewhere else. I wasn't much of a soldering guy, so I asked a friend of mine, can you build this for me? He said, yeah, sure, I'll do it. Buy me a beer. Okay, cool. So yeah, start out small also, and also careful there because it's really addictive. In the Netherlands, Marktplaats is your friend. In Germany, that would be kleinanzeigen.de. I guess in other parts of the world, it would probably still be eBay. I don't know, or Craigslist. Is that still a thing? I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, secondhand. I think 90% of what I buy is secondhand. nobody will have to build something new. There's so much stuff out there, so much stuff that gets sold off, and it'll save you at least 20% and probably more. In a lot of cases, it will save you 50%. For instance, at the moment, if you look at Marktplaats in the Netherlands, at the moment you look it's the Synth Forum marketplace. Synth Forum is an interesting site if you like synthesizers in the Netherlands. Proper old school forum, which is a really active marketplace. There's tons of Eurorack modules for sale out there. Very interesting prices. And you can start with the really simple ones, with the Dupfer ones. Like the Dupfer secondhand things go for pretty little money. And Dupfer basically created the whole Eurorack ecosystem, and it's great stuff. So yeah, get a secondhand drum computer for, what's Drum Brute Impact cost? 180 euros? It's reasonable. Of course, it's still a lot of money, but I'm hoping you can save up that bit. And if not, do it on your computer. Like I said, my favorite record of the last couple of years was done only on a computer. So yeah, and otherwise, use your imagination. Try to be different. I really hope that you're not trying to be Tiesto or Armin van Buuren. I'm sure they're great in their own right. I'm sure they're okay people. I don't find the music interesting myself, but try to do something of your own. I see so many people, I want to sound like him and him. Why would you want that? Because you want to be as successful as him. These people didn't get successful by emulating somebody else. They did get successful by creating their own style, creating their own legend. And of course, some people got really famous because they got good money behind them, but definitely not because they created something which was kind of like somebody else did. I don't think that's an interesting way to go about art. You can use elements of what somebody else did. You can quote some people. You can honor some people in music. Absolutely. That's been done for ages. It's a regular thing in jazz to quote your heroes in your music. That's absolutely a possibility, but you give it your own twist. Flip it, turn it around, mash it, and then something else comes out. The way Public Enemy went about beats, they sample a record, but they chop it up like crazy, so you didn't recognize where the sample was coming from anymore. That to me is really cool. Or find a process in that modular or in VCV Rack and find something. Hey, I didn't hear that sound anywhere else yet before, and then build on that. Yeah, and let yourself inspire by the machines. That's what I try to do. And that's what happens to me. Sometimes I get a new piece of gear, like this Chase Bliss pedal that I just got, run stuff to that, and I could make an album. First time I got it, I hooked it up with a couple of other pedals. I run something through it, and before I knew it, I got started here at 12, and before I knew it, it was 6. And the days are gone, so, and it was only playing with that little thing. I should have recorded it all and just edit from that. Oh, that's actually a tip. When I start playing with my modular, I start patching, not right away, but at some point, hey, this starts to get sound interesting. So hit record and record everything. It doesn't matter if shit goes wrong, you can always edit something from it and find your stuff from there. Especially when I do sound design, sometimes I listen back to the sessions I've recorded. What did I do there? That's interesting now. Take that snippet, and that could easily be the basis for another great trailer sound or even for a track. So yeah, it's like a friend of me and mine who was into field recording says, always be recording.